I'm delighted that I have Kamaya Shah with me today. Maduro is not able to join us. I commandeered these two young students to help with the data analysis for tonight. And Kamaya is going to walk through some of the data with us. And I think I can also say she's looking for any opportunities to work with companies as soon as she graduates or to do other work in the meantime. So what I'd like to do first is to talk about what this assessment is. So on my website, I have what's called an AI readiness assessment for enterprise leaders. And it is 18 questions that have been broken down into these categories here. I've had consultations with Julio Barro, who really helped me refine the questions. Luda also worked with me and helped me develop this questionnaire to be what it is today. It's the second rev of this. Our data that we're going to see tonight is basically from December of last year to the end of September. I'll quickly just show you what this looks like. We ask very few questions up front because we don't want to turn people off. This takes about 10 minutes at least to go through, depending on how prepared you are. I also have a link here to the full questionnaire so you can see all the questions that are there to help you understand the data. I'll be giving you a link to the presentation when we're done. So in our current state, I'm missing one thing. I'm missing my notes, so just a second. All right, so the current state of AI adoption shows that for all companies who filled out the form on my website, only 28% either are or have implemented AI. And only 47 companies have implemented AI so far to date. So there's a few things that can skew the data. The first is that it's totally skewed to SMBs. One of the things that we thought was happening was that when we asked people the size of their organization, we had 0 to 100 first. So we swapped these positions, but it still seems like that was the top size that people were reporting. And we're also giving you the data to play with. Let me just show you what that looks like. My Excel genius created this Looker Studio data. And so what you can do here, there's two tabs here. You can go here and you can click on organizational readiness or cost reduction, and you can see the key barriers. You can see a lot of data about each of the 18 questions. So there's a lot of playing around you can do here. And I think it's really powerful if you really want to drill down into the data. Any questions? Okay. So what we've learned is that cost reduction is the primary objective across industries. In our second rev, we added revenue generation, and we were surprised that that was really quite low compared to cost reduction. Enhancing customer experience was very close, particularly for customer-facing sectors. Data analysis, you're going to see data analysis in large enterprises and large companies. We separate those two out. Enterprise is 1,000 and beyond, and large is 1,000, 500 to 1,000. You have there.
Okay. So as we can see here, so given the data filled out in the survey, we can see only 28% of the companies have started implementing and actually like practically using AI in their companies. So that means 72% of the companies are just still in the exploring stage or in the planning stage, and they have not like practically started to implement. And as you can see in these bars, the blue shades, which is the light blue and the dark blue, refer to the companies who are in the implementing stage and have started implementing. So we can see amongst them, the marketing sector, the technology sector, and the education sector are in a good shape as compared to other sectors.
And technology is also
Yeah.
heavy adopters as well here.
Yes, and we can say education is doing better, because as we can see, most of the schools and universities have started adopting like generative AI and AI, and there are a lot of courses and subjects. Especially since I'm a student, I know, because we have many courses on LLMs and prompt engineering in our university as well, and so as others. In the marketing and media sector, even like Rosemary would have a great experience on ad and performance marketing strategies, as all the marketing industry people use AI in their daily content creation task.
And marketing also has a massive amount of data, right? Sales data, lead data. And of course, I think it's no surprise about technology companies. Anything else, Kamai?
So the companies which are like very low, like which are not even using AI, are, we can see, it's the most in hospitality and tourism, and that might be because they still not have figured out how they can solve their daily like what they can accomplish using AI, and that can be because they are not enough educated AI leaders in that sector.
All right. So, and I just wanted to call out the fact that Honeywell was able to adopt in 2 years. I thought that was an amazing presentation that you mentioned, Christina. I was going to mention that as well. So here we can see that our overall trends, most industries are in the early stage of AI adoption, with a few companies across all sectors having fully implemented and are looking to scale. So very small number. That could be a reflection of the size of companies that come to my website to fill this out. We're not seeing enough of large companies represented in this data. And technology, education, and marketing leading industries, finance and healthcare still growing as well. I mean, at the conference, healthcare was such a big track, and you would think that they would be farther along, but they have a lot of private data, so I'm sure that their adoption is slowed down by that. And other things that we noticed was government and public sector still just exploring, very cautious approach, retail way behind, and professional services, which I would have expected to rate much higher given the educational level of the people that are normally employed there. And larger organizations tend to have higher AI adoption rates. Yes, so let's move on. So these are ranked in order, the 6 key barriers that we found from the data across all companies. So problem identification, figuring out what the use cases are, was the primary example of #1 barrier. Stakeholder buy-in. Of course, if you can't get stakeholder buy-in, you can't get budget, you can't upgrade your technology, you can't buy the tools, and you can't educate your team. And literacy and training, still a really important part of this whole mix. As I've seen in companies, there's still so many employees who are not using AI. They may run some prompts, but they're not using it in a significant way. And cost benefits. So of course, it's very expensive, and these line items haven't been budgeted for. I was on a call with OpenAI with a client looking at the cost of ChatGPT Enterprise, and they gave us a ballpark figure of $60 per user per month. the company has 1,500 employees, that's $1 million. And so, you know, this is a big undertaking for companies.
On Rosemary, and that one, did you get a sense that they actually were quoting off a price list, or because we're hearing quotes all over the board on that from those guys?
No, we didn't really get a sense. It was just, you know, we had to kind of put their feet to the fire to say, like, what is the cost of this? And then, you know, the salesperson just said, well, you should budget about $60 a month, but it could be lower, they said. So, yeah,
60 a year, you said.
$60 per user per month.
Oh, it's so if I want to use it as a consumer, it's $20 a month. But if I want to use it per month as an employee at a company, it's $60.
Right. Of course, you get all this security, right, baked in there. Well, and the Teams version is $30 a month, right? So that client is likely going to go with Gemini. So, any questions? All right, let's drive into enterprise. This is 1,000+ employees. We had 120 companies mark themselves as enterprise. So what we see here is that data analysis and insight was the primary objective of them adopting AI, cost reduction. Now wait until you see the slide for large, and you'll see what happens with these charts. So, you know, their barriers to entry are difficulty in coordinating across multiple departments because they're so large. They have slower decision-making, pressure to demonstrate success. So as we go into these barriers in more detail, securing support from various stakeholders is the primary issue because they're concerned about diverse interests that align with, you know, across the organization and the concern of job displacement. And not having, you know, high value AI use cases for these corporations is another issue. They also struggle with accurately assessing AI adoption's financial implications and what it's going to cost for the organization. AI literacy, we're kind of grouping this with training because it keeps coming up as an issue. There's a significant gap in understanding AI capabilities and limitations. And of course, we come back to the financial issues and our technology infrastructure. Now, for large companies, we still have data analysis as our primary objective, but then cost reduction and revenue expansion become primary, you know, secondary and significant objectives. So here we see the barriers once again to be stakeholder buy-in, problem identification, and AI literacy. I think stakeholder buy-in is a significant thing because it impacts so many of these other barriers that they're facing. So technology infrastructure still remains a big challenge, highlighting the complexity of integrating, you know, into larger and more complex systems. Mid-sized companies, cost reduction, enhancing customer experience, big things. And the barriers, once again, problem identification, AI literacy. So there's still this significant gap in understanding what AI can do, cost benefit analysis, and the investment are significant things. And interesting, and we have no answer, is stakeholder buy-in is quite low here. It's the last one. I mean, we can only see what the numbers are. We don't really know why people are selecting what they're selecting. I also think could be an issue in the data where someone will come in and fill this out. They get a score at the end. If they don't like the score, I think it's very possible that they could come back in and fill out the form again. And I think that's part of the reason why we see so many companies here in the SMB space. We have 553 companies represented as small, medium-sized businesses. Cost reduction, I think that's no surprise for small businesses who are always looking for ways to reduce cost. Data analysis insights, there's so much data, it's often siloed. And automation of tasks, we haven't seen that one come so high before. Stakeholder buy-in again, problem identification, literacy, and I'm going to wrap it all up for you. Kamai, is there anything else you'd like to say on those slides? Since I went through fast.
No, like those were perfect. I mean, if to everyone who had attended the conference, I mean, I remember discussion between Andy and Sandeep and Paul. So someone from the attendee has asked the question like, what are the challenges that large companies versus small companies are facing in adopting Gen AI? And to which they replied that large companies are facing problems in building, whereas small companies are facing problems with the distribution, because they don't have they have no stakeholders or investors to invest in them, whereas large companies have kind of have the infrastructure set up, but they might not be very proficient into building the services and products. So that's I mean, the answers to all of these questions were mostly, I mean, I got them through the conference itself.
Thank you. So our insights, and these are our top trends. Mid-sized organizations have the highest readiness, but just remember that we have a small proportion of mid-sized organizations in the data. Literacy gap and industry-specific objectives. So cost reduction is common throughout all of these company sizes. Customer experience was key for customer-facing sectors. And most industries are still in the very early stages. Very few have implemented and scaled AI.
Rosemary, you've got a question from Sharon?
Oh, sorry, Sharon. Yes, sorry. I'm looking at my slides.
Good to see you. Hey, I have a question. First of all, it's a fantastic presentation, fantastic data. I'm curious how your respondent defines implementation, because on the one hand, we talk about it as being adoption, and sometimes adoption can be trial, sometimes it can be usage, and sometimes it can be we've developed this AI solution, we're deploying it for clients, we're deploying it internally. How do they define implementation? And is it possible their adoption is actually higher because they're using implementation rather than the term adoption?
So I'm just looking at the data that they would have responded to. So I don't think that answers your question. Securing alignment for AI. I'm just trying to see if there's anything that answers that question for the user who is filling out this survey, because I don't really have a good answer for you. Tools, no. I don't have a breakdown, and I never asked a question that separated out those two pieces. But after this session, I'm going to start over again with the data, because it's now 10 months old, and it's time to be refreshed. So I'll note that as something that we can maybe look at as separating out adoption and implementation.
That would be fantastic, because I think you might be surprised the adoption actually might be a little higher. But I'm actually super impressed with how many people that you've participated in this survey. And I really like the analysis you did with that. So great job.
Thank you. Well, it's really, I started to get a lot more traction on this assessment in the last 4 to 6 months. So obviously, you know, it takes time for a website, a tool to get out there. And so I think we're getting more traction from different size companies. My website is primarily marketing. But I think I'm seeing in the data that there's other companies now who are coming. So the biggest challenges are that everything is interconnected with these barriers, right? Problem identification and infrastructure and training. I mean, you can't have training unless you have buy-in, and you need to, you know, identify what your problem is. The investment challenges are very different across different organizations. I just gave you an example of $1 million a year for one company. And of course, SMBs have limited resources. Stakeholder buy-in is important, and I'm not sure how we can move that needle with stakeholder buy-in, because I don't understand this late in the game, 2 years in, how the C-suite is not pushing this down through the organization.
Rosemary, I can comment on that. I see it all the time now. It's so clear what's going on. We see it in training, we see it at board. I think there's human nature. I think there's something about 5 to 10% of the people are autodidactic, early seekers, this group here, they just go. There's another 20, 30% that are skeptics and you can never move them. All the ones in the middle are just waiting. And in my view, less than 5 to 8% of the CEOs are hard charging. So every time, so after we finish a conference, I had a briefing with a $150 million PE-backed software company here with the entire management team. They were just like all the other companies. The CEO didn't quite know how to think about it. Everyone else is, no, it's an IT thing here. All the budget's over in the IT and they're doing some random experience here. And everyone, the brother, has an excuse of why they aren't adopting faster.
Okay, I've got one for you then. So in an organization that I work with, they had, it wasn't adopted within the company, and there was no initiative from on top to start using it. In fact, initially, they were told that they couldn't use it. And so, of course, everybody's using it. We found that out from OpenAI, who told us that 78% of the employees were using it because they could tell by the domain, the email addresses, right? And so, but these employees are keeping this secret, right? They're not telling people that they're using it. So then I hear that the CEO is going to write a blog post about AI, and I'm thinking, well, wait, I didn't know he knew anything about AI. So yes, it is a challenge. Yes, we have some questions. Christina, I don't know who put their hand up first.
Thank you, Rosemary. You remind me of Nina Groom's presentation at the Generative AI conference. I forgot to mention this. Nina is on the board of a publicly traded company called Alamo Group. And she mentioned specifically that she brought in some training for the board, because one of the things they have on their annual agenda is training, and they slotted AI into that. She then, with the concurrence of the board, brought that to the leadership team, and she specifically called out that there were leaders on the leadership team who were eagerly raising their hand, I want to be involved. There were ones who were sort of skeptical but curious, and then there were a bunch that were sort of frozen. And she used the enthusiasts as the ones that she leveraged as a board member to encourage them to begin to take action and what have you in terms of implementation internally, which maps perfectly to what Paul was just describing, that you have these people who are ready to go, you have these people who are sitting on the edge, and then you have these people who are basically nowhere. She was leading from the board down, which we know from every other case where we're having major transformation in a business works best. But it sounds like some of the people who are responding on your, I don't know if you asked what their role is, but it sounds like your respondents tend to be in the middle or below.
I think that's probably right. And no, we didn't ask that question. I didn't want to ask too many questions and then, yeah.
Understood.
Yeah, so what I think is so fascinating about this is that there's always a technology adoption curve. That's fairly normal. What is different about this is that there's a lot of enthusiasm, but there's so much uncertainty around it. And normally, the more uncertainty, the less likely people are to adopt it on a broad scale way. And so I saw that in another technology 10 years ago. There was too much uncertainty about what platform, so people didn't move. And so we had to get our client to convince their competitors to adopt the technology. So to me, it's uncertainty, but people can't identify uncertainty. But it is one of the biggest, I guess, things that thwarts behavior is uncertainty, but people can't tell you that.
Right, good point. Lucinda?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this presentation, this analysis. I mean, you're so thorough. You go in, you just get everything. It's awesome. But I also have a question for you, and also anybody else in the community who's on this call right now. And that is, and the question is, I think that some of the interconnected barriers are, one of them that you mentioned was just lack of knowing what AI does and how it can be used. And then just the industry and the specific use cases, right? So when we're trying to unearth use cases, what we're trying to do is just talking to different either groups of people or people who have workflows that are critical to the to whatever the business model is of their company. And a lot of times it's like they're not really sure about what AI can do for them, and we're maybe not as necessarily familiar with like what are the actual workflows that are driving their business. So it's this real conversation that we have. So I'm just wondering, what techniques are people using to kind of get past that? Well, how could AI help and well, what use cases do you have? Like what powers your industry? It's been, I mean, I'm doing it, I'm learning it, etc. But any lessons that people have found?
Well, I think the only thing that I can add to that is that, no, I'm going to let other people comment first, and then I'll add in after that. So who would like to go next?
Lucinda, one thing I've realized myself over the last 2 weeks is that the early adopters need, I think we've all talked frameworks and ideas. The early majority need use cases and peer comparisons, because no one wants to be above. Very few people want to be ahead adopting that. The other thing that I've been in 3 organizations now, when we start talking about the AI premium that companies are getting either in the public markets or from an acquisition standpoint, the execs, the CEO and the CFO get very animated and start, particularly if they don't have any of that pressure coming in.
Right, that's good for public companies, right? But
no, I'm private. I mean, if you're PE owned or
and what's the
the
premium then that they're getting?
The
Bragging
premium
rights?
no, the premium, the private equity firms are telling us that if you can convince them that you are starting to deploy AI to get efficiencies, and particularly if you can have a path to have AI generate incremental revenue, they'll give you 20 to 30% more valuation in that company, either buying or selling as a private equity firm. So these aren't the technology companies. This is insurance companies or anybody that's doing process reengineering.
And when you're talking about the peer comparisons before, what are you specifically talking about, or give me an example or share an example?
I'm a mid-sized insurance company here. No one's using Gen AI in my industry. Oh, here's another mid-sized insurance company that's taken 20% of the calls deflected at a higher rate. Here's another utility company that's improved RFP turnaround for 100-page RFPs by 3 hours. So here's another brand. I'm seeing Liz. Here's another brand marketing company that's collapsed their idea to content deployed in the market from 3 weeks to 3 days. So it's got to be, what I'm finding, it has to be in industry use case by somebody else doing it, has specifics on what they did, ideally the technology, ideally the money they save, but as long as you can say what they did and how, at least at least what I'm finding. It's at least starting to open it up. But I still think I'm riffing a little bit. I still think at the day it gets back to economics, because the executive meetings I've been in, boy, you can hear all the damn excuses come out about how, it's too risky here, Liz. You don't understand our sales process is different here. We've already looked at the risk here. We can't take this risk here. We've already decided that the slow mover is the most pragmatic way to protect the market cap of this company. I can give you all excuses here. So
Interesting, yeah.
Christina?
Well, just building on what was said about the technology adoption life cycle, referenceable segments are always what determine what is credible. So if you use Jeffrey Moore's definition of a referenceable segment, these are people that are credible to each other. So Paul was just describing that small insurance company to small insurance company. It can be role-based, it can be marketer to marketer. There's lots of different ways that you can get referenceability, but you have to have an example that is considered credible to you in your case. The other piece of advice I would have for you, Lucinda, is to map it to the key performance indicators that fall in that are held by people that are in the WINS framework.
So, okay, like,
So let's say you're talking to a sales executive. What part of their organization has somebody who is making their primary contribution with words, images, numbers, or sounds? Pick whichever 1, 2, or 3 that they are using. Find out their key performance indicator and find out how you can use generative AI to move that key performance indicator for that performer.
okay, thanks.
Sure.
And Liz, in the last couple minutes?
Yeah, I was just thanks for the data, Rosemary. It's awesome to see. I was gonna mention that where I was seeing with my clients, them trying to dip their toe is through pilots. So I noticed in your questions that maybe you might want to add something about has initiated a pilot on Gen AI, because rather than full adoption or implementation, I think what they're doing is test and learning. And what I'm seeing is them picking an area they want to see if it works. And then, nervous, get the CEO to support, get the attorneys to support, get folks to support, but it's on a specific use case where they can show efficiency, which you said, it's all about efficiency, but it's piloting. So maybe the way you're asking that question is too broad for the answer. And if you put something in about piloting for success stories, you might get higher numbers.
Right.
At least that's what I'm saying.
Okay, that's a really good point, and I'm gonna run the questions through Paul and John before we relaunch again. So, and anyone else who's interested, so.
Yeah, and then the
Here-
second
here-
thing that I would say is a lot of people as well in those same companies that are saying they're not adopting, I don't say everyone, a very large majority are doing it on their own personal, outside the company. So if they aren't able to use the company, they're doing it at home with their personal accounts and still using it quietly. So there's
Yes,
that quiet adoption that's behind the scenes that I don't know how you account for that either.
Two other things I can share in terms of waking up a management team. If you get them talking about what their kids are doing, the whole room wakes up, because I think we've seen no other technology where the kids are using as much or more than the parents. And the other one, if people haven't done a chathub.gg, ask the company, should I work for this company? Give me a yes or no answer and explain your rationale. And I found that very effective at getting attention.
Okay, so I know we're at time, Paul, so people are gonna get these slides, and if you have questions, you can let me know. Anything else? Yes, Christina.
I just wanted to say happy Canadian Thanksgiving.
Oh, thank you.
That's
Right.
I realized when Paul asked me that, I didn't realize that, oh, that's Thanksgiving Day here, so
Yeah.
anyway. I'm gonna quickly put this in the, well, Paul will send it out, yeah, okay.
Super, great job, Rosemary. Thank you.